Start the recording here. And give me 1 second. Okay, thank you everyone for attending tonight. Really fortunate to have Tom Rossi here. He's the co-founder of Hire Pixels, a bootstrap product development company with a passion for building simple, elegant, and beautiful SaaS products, the most notable of which is Buzzsprout, one of the largest podcast hosting platforms in the world. So, Tom, take it away. Let me make sure
Right.
you have screen sharing privileges working.
We're about to find out. All right. Do you see that?
Yes.
Great. Here. Great. Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and to be able to share some of these things. I originally put this presentation together for Rails SaaS several years ago, and it was talking to other people that are looking at getting into, building Rails-based SaaS products. But it was a really fun exercise, and what I tried to do was identify what are some of the things that we say in our company that we've learned over the years, right, about how we build product, how we make decisions about what features do we build, and all the things that go into, should I build this feature? How should I write this code, or how should I approach it? And so it's really lessons learned that we've had over the years. And so I hope that it helps anybody who's considering building a product. If you're like, hey, I really want to learn, I want to use my Rails expertise and I want to go build a product, I hope that I can really help you. And I'm going to start with just a little bit of our story to give you an idea of what my background is and how we kind of ended up where we are. So originally we were a client services company. So people would hire us to build products for them. So, but this was like mid 90s that we started. So it was Microsoft, it was eventually became .NET. And we did that for a good number of years of building product. And then September 11th happened and just decimated the client services business, like especially for us, because we didn't have any recurring customers. All of our customers were, they'd hire you, you would solve a problem, you'd build a solution, and you deliver it, and then you move on. You got to go sell another deal. And so when that happened after September 11th, everybody froze. Nobody wanted to spend any money. Well, I'm totally bootstrapped. I'm like on credit cards, like literally just maxed out all of my credit cards. And so at that point, I'm sitting on a staff of 20 people and I got to figure out what to do. And so we started building our first product. So our first product was built as a result of need more than anything else. Like I needed to keep people busy more than anything else. And I thought I was just biding time for the contract services, the client services work to come back. And slowly that company just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And but at least we had launched a product out of it. And so as it got down, it eventually got down to just me. But I had a product that was growing every month. And nobody knew what SaaS was, like building software as a service. Nobody like nobody called it SaaS. There were no metrics. Nobody was capturing lifetime value or thinking about these things. And so it was all new of how you approached it. And around that time, I was introduced to 37 Signals, Basecamp, and Ruby on Rails. So at that point, I kind of reinvented the company to be a product company. Let's build more of these products and let's use Ruby on Rails. And that's kind of the high level of how we ended up where we are. Since then, I've taken on a couple partners that have brought different expertise to help, that are good friends, good businessmen that I wanted to be in partnership with. And the three of us are partners now at Hire Pixels, and we have several different products that we've built over the years. So that first product that we built was M-Sites. And then we launched a product called Donor Tools, a product called Tick, which is time tracking, Stream Care, and Buzzsprout. But the only products that we currently invest in Buzzsprout and StreamCare. So it's kind of like 37 Signals, where they have Basecamp as their big boy, and Hey, but then they still have High Rise or these other apps that are out there that they maintain, but they're not really developing for. So that's kind of our story, how we got to be where we are, and where some of our experience has been in terms of building product. So again, we've never built to sell. We've never gone down that path. We are about building recurring revenue on a product, and a lot of that's driven right from the fact that I was so desperate for recurring revenue when we were doing client services work, right? So we're not interested in building to sell. We're interested in building a product that generates revenue, that delivers value, and does all those things. So right now we have 5 majestic, we call it majestic monolith Rails applications that we built. And we have 2 separate teams. The Buzzsprout team and the StreamCare team is different. StreamCare team really only has 1 developer. The Buzzsprout team has 4 or 5 programmers and 2 or 3 designers. And that's the extent of the team. And with just that team, we're able to support over 120,000 podcasts on Buzzsprout, which is a tremendous amount of scaling work to be able to do that. A lot of bandwidth, a lot of server resources to be able to do that. But Rails, is great. So that's our story. Some disclaimers. Everything that I'm going to tell you, I've learned from somebody else. Everything that I'm going to tell you has been stolen from smarter people than I am. And I hope that you steal it from me, who stole it from them, and they probably stole it from somebody else. But some of the things that have really influenced us, obviously 37 Signals. 37 Signals, we've followed Getting Real and Shape Up, and we use Basecamp. And when we first were considering going down this path of Ruby on Rails, we actually went to Chicago and they had what they called a Getting Real workshop, which was so different than the way we used to build product when we were building it for client services, right? When you're dealing with a customer and you're responding to an RFP and you're writing out specification documents and all these kind of things. Whereas 37 Signals like, oh, that's all out the window. Like let's build something that we love. And anyways, so 37 Signals, massive impact on our business. Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, that was a big impact on our business. Sandy Metz, who I talked about earlier when we were chatting, she's my favorite developer. The way that she approaches object-oriented coding and stuff like that has always been a big impact on our company. So anything that I say that's really smart, it's probably coming from one of those people. And so that's a disclaimer. Another disclaimer is this is just our story of how we got where we are. It's not necessarily a prescription, and I don't want to make it sound like I know how this is going to work for your business. All I can say is this is how we got there, and every business has an element of luck, right? I would call it grace that we've been able to experience. The disproportionate favor that we have experience that we could not have planned for, we couldn't have predicted, we couldn't have created it. And so every product, I feel like every story has that element in it. And so it would be crazy for me to be like, oh, we're so smart and that's how we ended up where we are. That's just not true. So some disclaimers there. So when we're talking about lessons learned over the years, I feel like this is the biggest category of lessons that we've learned. And it's all around optimizing mass. This idea that every line of code, every feature that you build, everything that you do inside of your product. What was that?
I professional. Wait, look
Oh,
again.
sorry. So optimizing mass, this idea that everything that you do is adding mass to your product. And what you want to do is you want to optimize your mass, right? And if you think about your product as a racing boat, like you want to be nimble, you want to be able to pivot and turn and go fast and do all these different things. And every little bit of mass that you add to that boat makes it sink a little bit lower, makes it a little bit harder to turn, right? It takes a little bit more gas to keep it running. Every feature that you build, every person that you add to the team makes that boat a little bit heavier. And what's great, we're talking about Buzzsprout, right? Buzzsprout, I love it because I am in this racing boat and I'm surrounded by all of these big aircraft carriers that they can't even turn. Like they can't even, it takes them 2 miles just to stop. But meanwhile, Rails optimizing your mass allows you this just nimbleness to be able to do these different things. Before the call, we were talking about the fact that Buzzsprout, we launched a mobile app. We went from no mobile app at all and no idea of what we even wanted to do with the mobile app to having a mobile app within 6 months. Well, how is that possible? This is because we've optimized our mass. We're not bloated with features. We're not bloated with code. We're not bloated with dependencies. So optimizing mass is kind of a big category of lessons that we've learned. So how do you optimize mass? What are the lessons that we've learned related to that? The first one is having a mantra for your product. This idea that what is it that your product is going to do? If you can answer that question in a sentence, this is what we will be the best at. That's what I would call a mantra. And you should write it down and you should say it and you should use it all over the place. Like whenever you're thinking about what is it that we do. And so this is really taken right from Jim Collins in Good to Great, where he tells a story about, the fox and the hedgehog, the idea that the fox was super smart, right? And he could crafty and he could come up with all these different clever ideas, but the hedgehog could do one thing really, really well. He could roll up into a ball, and the fox could never get the hedgehog because the hedgehog could do one dumb thing, but he could do it really well. And the fox, even though he could do 1,000 things, it didn't matter. And I think there's something there for us as product people is what is going to be your one thing that you can do? What is that mantra that you can say? And so because of that, all of our products have a mantra that we bounce ideas off of. If you're talking about building a feature, right? You're talking about adding mass to a product. I want to know, how does that relate to our mantra? So Tick was our first Rails app that we ever built. And the mantra for that is the best way to track your time and hit your budget. The best way to track your time and hit your budget. It's not the best way to track your time. There's probably better ways to track your time. Like if you work at Walmart and you're just going to check into a little thingamajigger, that works just great, right? But if you want to hit a budget, then that's not a great way to do it. Right? If you want to, it's the best way to track your time and hit a budget. So now that's what we can say, you know what? We can be the best at that. I can't be the best at time tracking, but I can be the best at tracking your time to hit your budget. Buzzsprout, our mantra, for the longest time was the easiest way to host your podcast. But now over years, we've extended it. So we say it's the easiest way to host, promote, and monetize your podcast. So if we're talking about optimizing mass, having a mantra allows us to say, well, okay, is that feature going to help make this mantra more true? Is it going to make it easier to host, promote, and monetize your podcast? Right? Is that feature going to help Tick make it easier for you to track your time and hit your budget? And that helps you to say no to customers that say, well, I want this feature and I really, I want this thing and I'm going to cancel if you don't give it to me. Man, we are too busy. We have a mantra. There's something that we're doing. We're going to be the best way to track your time and hit your budget. And if that feature isn't going to help us do that any better, we're not going to build it. And it provides immense clarity to your developers, to your customers, to your marketing, everything that you do. So having that, I think, is a great way to be able to evaluate every piece of mass, every feature, every line of code, right? Rather than the question that a lot of people ask, which is, and it drives me crazy, well, how hard is that to build? I don't care how hard it is to build, right? It's mass that you're adding into my product, right? Even if I don't care if it's 10 lines of code, that's 10 lines of code that I'm going to carry for the rest of my life in this product that I'm building, right? So instead of asking how hard is it to build, you should be asking the question, how does it advance the mantra of what we're trying to accomplish with this product? Is the juice, worth the squeeze? Is it going to produce what I want it to produce at the end of it? So, okay, that's one of our big lessons. All of our products, we talk about our mantra, we bounce ideas off of that. Another one, which I can't remember where I got this one, but you'll never know less than you know right now. You'll never be, the way that we say it in the office is like, you'll never be as dumb as you are right now. So if you think about that, right? You're making decisions now and you're the dumbest you're ever going to be. So maybe you should make those decisions, right? Maybe you should wait until you're smarter to make those decisions. I talk about like old Tom. Don't trust old Tom. Like he didn't know what he was doing. If I'm looking at code from, 5 years ago, he knew a fraction of what he knows today. So don't trust him. He shouldn't have been making those decisions to begin with, right? And so what you want to do is you want to avoid making decisions that a smarter version of yourself could make. Let me say that again. Like you want to avoid making decisions that a smarter version of you could make later, right? Do you really want to trust that guy, the guy who's the dumbest he's ever going to be, right? Or would you rather pass it on and say, you know what, future Tom, he's going to know what to do with that, right? This isn't about being indecisive. It's not saying, oh, well, I don't want to make any decisions. It's saying, I'm going to avoid mass. I'm going to avoid doing anything until I've learned enough to make a decision, right? Or you've reached diminishing returns. You're no longer learning anything. Well, in that case, make a decision, right? Or figure out how you can learn something. But at the end of the day, you'll never know less than you know right now. So if you want to optimize mass, figure out what decisions truly have to be made right now. There's a lot of different ways to apply the lesson, right? The code that we're writing, the features that we're building, the decisions that we're making about our business. We want to ask ourselves, do I really need to make this decision right now? Sometimes we'll talk about, are we pouring concrete? Because if I'm pouring concrete, I better know that I'm pretty smart to make that decision, because when you pour concrete, you're not busting that up, right? And so you can say, well, can I avoid pouring that concrete? Is there a way for us to do this and then defer until we know something more before we actually do that? It's a great way to optimize mass. I've heard it this way in coding: write the minimum amount of code to solve the problem you have that gives you the most flexibility for the future. We are horrible. Anybody here that's a coder, you know that this is true. We are horrible at predicting the future. We are horrible at figuring out exactly what features we're going to need. And we build out all this flexibility and functionality in our code that we think we're going to need, but we're never going to be as dumb as we are right now. Why are you giving yourself that freedom and flexibility? You don't even know if you're ever going to need it, but you're writing mass into your app to be able to do that. So all of that to say, optimize your mass by leaving features, functionality to smarter versions of yourself. And so that's something that we say all the time in our office. Be uncomfortable with your first release. So whenever when we first launched our product, when we launch features, we're uncomfortable, right? We want to scale things back to the point where it's just enough. It's just enough to get the idea out there and to get some traction, right? If you're not uncomfortable with your first release, then you probably went too far. If you're not a little bit nervous that you didn't build out enough, then you probably overbuilt it because you made all kinds of decisions. You added all kinds of mass to your app based on assumptions, knowing that you're the dumbest you're ever going to be. And so what are the chances that you're going to know exactly what your customer wants, right? So what you can always add more features, but what you can't do is you can't ever take those features away. It is so hard to roll back features that have made it out in front of customers. So you want to be uncomfortable with that first release. You want to figure out ways that you can learn from real customers that are, and when I say customers, I mean people that have exchanged money for the product that you're giving, right? Not your friends or your family or other people that looked at your product and said, oh, I love this or that, right? Somebody that's actually willing to pay you money, that tells you a lot about your product. And so getting to that place where you could learn that, and it's subjective, it's not easy. Everyone's comfort level is different. But this is something that you'll hear us say in the office when we're talking about the edges of a feature that we're going to build, is how much do we want to delete? How much do we want to cut back, right? I don't know if you guys saw it, but Tesla, there was a tweet from one of the senior designers at Tesla, and he was talking about how they're going to put the turn signal. They took the turn signal away from the Tesla. So there's no stalk. Instead, there's buttons on the steering wheel. And they do this because they're relentlessly trying to reduce the mass associated with the vehicle, literally. In this case, they're trying to reduce complexity. They're trying to reduce the number of parts. And when they did that, they got so much backlash, they decided, you know what, we're going to put it back. And his quote was something like, if you're not deleting so much that you don't occasionally have to put it back, then you're not deleting enough. And I was like, oh, That's pretty good, even for software. If you have so much functionality in that feature that you're not a little bit uncomfortable with it, then you probably overdid it. Another thing that we've learned a lot is running experiments. The idea of what's if I'm not as smart as I could be, what experiment could I run that would help me to know something to be true, right? That I could get to the end of it and I could say I learned something. And what you see a lot of times with business people is they'll get to the end of it and things don't go well or whatever, and they'll go, well, at least we learned. Well, at least we learned something. Well, you could have said at the beginning what you expected to happen, and then you truly could have learned something. But instead, you're trying to look backwards to figure out if there's something there to learn. So what you want to do is you want to structure an experiment where you say, I want to know if this feature is going to be used, for example. I want to know if customers are going to want this. And so maybe you roll it out to a percentage of your customers and see who clicks on it, right? That's a great experiment that you could run. For us, where I've seen a lot of these applications is we will do things in a very manual way. In other words, we'll do something that's not automated. There's not really good, there's not a good process for it. But I'm not going to take all the time to write all the code, to pour all that concrete to, build out this feature when I don't even know if anybody's interested in it. And so you say, okay, well, what's an experiment that we could run to find out whether people actually would use this feature? And so a great example of this is we have an affiliate program with Buzzsprout where people can, be an affiliate and refer people to Buzzsprout. And, the team wanted to build out all this functionality, and affiliates can log in and they can track who they've referred and blah, 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 blah. And I think we don't even know if we're ever going to get an affiliate. We don't even know if there's ever going to be one person to do it. So is there an experiment that we could run? Can we manually do something that could eventually be automated, but let's just minimize the amount of mass. Let's run an experiment. And so for the affiliate program, which we launched, 10 years ago, it's all manual. Somebody says, I want to be an affiliate. I or one of the other developers has to go into the database and add the affiliate, right? When they get paid, they say, oh, it's time to get paid. It sends an email and then somebody else has to send them a PayPal payment. Well, gosh, couldn't you automate that? Yeah, I could. But guess what? It's been 10 years and we have 5 affiliates. Can you imagine if I built out all of that mass without running that experiment? Can you imagine if I'd automated all it? It would have been fun code to write, don't get me wrong. But it would have been something that would have had to carry forward for the rest of this product, right? And so run experiments, do stuff that's manual, do something that's not automated. And then great, if people are using it, now I can go automate it. It's a great example of how you can run experiments and do stuff. It's similar to this one too. When we're talking about optimizing mass, it's don't solve problems that you don't have. Don't solve problems that you don't have. Don't spend time, don't spend brain cycles, don't write lines of code trying to solve problems that you don't have. That'll be a great problem to solve. It's something that you'll hear us say all the time. That'll be a great problem to solve. If that comes up, that'll be a great problem for us. If we have so many people using this feature that we have to go optimize the indexes in the database, or we have to separate this out, or we need to blah, blah, blah. That'd be a great problem to solve because that means that we have customers that are using this thing, or customers that are paying us for it. There's all kinds of ways to apply this idea of not solving problems, prematurely scaling your product and worrying about all of the different scaling issues, right? Won't that be a great problem to have? You have so many customers that you're worried about how you're going to scale it up. Yeah, that would be a great problem to solve, but it's not worth your time right now. Don't solve problems you don't have. Remember, you're never going to be as dumb as you are right now. So why would you do it now? And I'll give you a great example of that with Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout, that was the second product I think I ever built on Rails. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was like Rails 2, not even Rails 2.2, which was a big upgrade, right? It was an early version of Rails. It had very limited caching. It had very limited abilities for scaling your app. So if I had tried to solve those problems, I would have ended up with all kinds of garbage in my app that I would have had to refactor multiple times over the years. But instead, I was blessedly ignorant. I was blessedly as dumb as I could be, and I didn't do anything. I didn't solve any of those problems because I didn't even know they would be problems. Now you fast forward and you're like, okay, Tom, but now you got 120,000 podcasts. So yeah, now you got those problems. I do, but guess what? I got 120,000 customers, right? I got a team. I've got contacts. I've got, you know what I mean? Like I can solve that problem in a way that I could never have solved it in those early days of building the product. So don't solve problems that you don't have. Don't make decisions about scaling and things like that when you know you're only getting it smarter. So it's a great application, something that we say all the time. The last one, when you're talking about optimizing mass, man, there is nothing more massive than hiring another person. And so you should be really, really intentional about when you're going to hire somebody. You want to grow smart. You want to grow slow. Too many people are like, they judge their success based on how big their team is. And when they hear about how small we are relatively, they don't believe it. And it's like, it doesn't happen by accident, right? Like we're very intentional about not adding mass. There's nothing more massive that you can put in your boat than a person, okay? So everyone will press you to grow faster, but resist the urge. 37 Signals talks about hire when it hurts. There's a lot of truth to that. Like when there's hurt, then you know there's a pain, there's a problem that needs to be solved. Find ways to use your small size as a strength. Every time you add a person to your team, there's exponentially more communication that's required, right? If you can stay small, you can stay nimble, you can be that racing boat, right? Because you're optimizing your mass. You're not adding people to the team that you don't need to add. More people doesn't always lead to more profits. Even if it leads to more revenue, it doesn't always lead to more profits. So it's something to be intentional about when you're thinking about, I want to build this product. How am I going to approach it? Well, optimize your mass, be intentional with deciding when to hire. And that's my last lesson learned in the area of optimizing mass, which I think is the biggest thing that we've learned over the years, the most important thing for how we build our products. So we'd love to have any questions or discussion, whatever you guys want.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. No problem.
Really, really enjoyed that. Please, everyone, let's open up the floor to questions. This is a great opportunity. While people are thinking about this and maybe getting their questions together, I'll throw one at you. Could you talk a little bit about your considerations that came up and how you managed them with scaling? And then Anton will go next.
Yeah, so I mean, every scaling problem was its own problem. So we had, issues of bandwidth, and so you're talking about a CDN, a content delivery network. You had issues of caching, right, to help with performance, and so then you're looking at all the different things that you get from Rails caching. We went with Kubernetes to be able to horizontally scale the application, but again, we were around for years before we didn't touch any of that until 2020. And so my point is, I wouldn't spend any brain cycles worrying about it until you start to get customers, right? And that'll be a great problem to solve because now you got customers paying you. And then you could look at, there's so many good resources out there for how to scale your Rails app. We know that we can, right? In the old days, they'd say, well, Rails doesn't scale. We know Rails scales, right? You can go look at Shopify if you want the biggest example of, a behemoth. But it can be done. It's just a matter of technical know-how.
Anton.
Thank you for the talk. Don't you think that in earlier days starting a project was much easier? Nowadays users have expectations for certain features. For example, imagine you decided to launch a new car and you need to include various stuff at start, like touch screens, conditioner, and like other. So I think that the products should also be sophisticated in the beginning to attract new customers, and it requires quite a lot of money and time.
Yeah, the car, right? Like it's too big. You need something smaller. Now, could I launch a new a new way to listen to my music off of my phone in the car, that's something I could do, and I could compete with other people that are doing the same thing, you know, but I can't do all of the features required for a car. So if you said, oh, I'm going to launch a new social network, good luck. Like, I wouldn't go down that path. Like, in order to be successful at that, it's going to be really hard. But if you say, I'm going to build a product that's specifically for educators in the New York area, that's going to help them track their performance reviews, that is, I could craft a mantra around that, that I could actually deliver the feature set, that I could be the best at doing that thing. Now, how much is it worth to the customer? I don't know. That's the process of figuring out whether this is a product that you can build. But I don't think it's I don't think we're done building apps for people. I don't think we're done building products. I don't think you need VC funding, and I don't think you need to launch with a complicated feature set. What you see over and over again is people launch with a simple feature set, and then it grows over time as they get more and more customers, and then they keep adding complexity to it and other ways of making money off of their existing customers, to the point where it's like it's a detriment to the actual customers that were there at the beginning. It used to be so simple. It used to just do this. So that, I mean, that's just my opinion, but that's what I think.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom. Wait, I get disconnected.
No, you're here.
No, we're here. We can hear you.
Sorry,
Loud and
I
clear.
just the video is froze. Love this talk. Resonates on so many levels. Probably just coming back to, hey, actually, I just encountered a vendor where they did the opposite. They started with like a very small feature set, and they got inertia, but that inertia was from their free stuff. And what I kind of noticed, this was my first time encountering this vendor. They took away all the free stuff and put it into their paid tier. So their free tier just got worse and worse and worse. And as I'm working with this vendor, I'm like, why are we even using them? They're just getting in the way of stuff. And it was super frustrating. And I don't know, it just, it almost feels like that it's like the opposite of what you just said, where there's also another way. These companies like, hey, we'll give us something free, get traction, and then we'll roll back and actually have all the features into the paid product and take it away from the free one, which is the thing that got people on, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying about the VC funded model, right? I've always been bootstrapped. So I've got to build something that people are willing to pay for. Whereas if you go and you get a $25 million runway, well, you could build something that's totally free, and God only knows if anybody would ever pay for it, because you got $25 million to burn. And then at some point, you're going to try to turn those free users into paid users. And we've all seen the bait and switch and haven't liked it. So, I mean, at least my perspective is build something that's valuable, charge a price that's in line with the value that you bring, and people will pay for it. And people value simplicity. They don't necessarily need a product that does everything.
Yeah, and maybe just in a similar vein, what are your thoughts on like what internet was like in the 2010s versus what internet is now in like the 2020 era? Just like, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I would love to hear I have some thoughts and I would love to hear what you got, especially as someone who's been building software like through that period.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been doing this on the internet since people were talking about the internet, right? Like in the mid 90s when I started the company in 96. And so at that time, people weren't even sure how they were going to get on the internet, right? They were still doing AOL discs and stuff like that. And so I think it's changed a ton. Some of the things that are positive for people like us is people understand now that there are products on the internet that I could go pay for that would help me solve problems, real problems that I have, Whereas before, when we launched Tick, I remember people are like, I wouldn't pay for this. Why am I going to give you money every month so that you can track time? Or you'd have obnoxious software people that are like, oh, this is a feature. This isn't a product. And I'd be like, don't sign up. But we had tons of people that were signing up. And so we had all these customers that were signing up that were willing to pay us $19 a month to be able to track their time and hit their budgets because we were delivering on that value prop. And then you had some people that were like, why would anybody pay monthly for software when I could go buy something? Well, now people are kind of used to how a SaaS product works. And there's a lot of other models that have come out since then of, doing an annual plan where there's options to get upgrades, perpetual perpetual licenses that you can run locally, like what 30 Signals is doing with Once and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of maturity that has happened in the marketplace where people know how this works. And that helps us to be able to sell our product.
Yeah, or maybe I just wanted to talk about like how in the 2010s you brought up VC. So that was like that clicked something for me. I feel like in the 2010s, the whole internet was VC funded. And then now that whole thing is now changed, where all the VC money is kind of gone and data is the currency, right? Advertising is driving a lot of the stuff on the internet in terms of software. Like, why build it if you can't get scale? Why build it if you can't, you know? So I guess maybe that's what I was kind of going into as well. But that's interesting.
I feel like that's always been the case. It's always been the case. I remember it was actually a podcast years ago. And I remember the guy was just pressing me hard on wanting me to share how much money that we make or whatever. And I'm like, I make enough. I make enough for me and my team to be happy at doing the work that's important to us that we love. And every day I'm excited about the stuff that I get to do. And he was, he came from this background of like, get VC money, build it, scale it, flip it, go build something else. And I'm like, I want to build products that I want to build. I want to build products that I want to play with. And they're my Legos. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But I remember they were using this like diminutive, like a condescending term. They were like, oh, well, you're a lifestyle business. I'm like, isn't every business a lifestyle business? Right? Your lifestyle is you're working 80 hours a week for some VC, hoping that you're going to flip one day. Or you're building a business that's sustainable where I could work a realistic number of hours and see my kids, plays and go to their sports games. Like you're all choosing your lifestyle for what business you're building. And so some of that I feel like has it's more common now that you're seeing people that are building businesses that they're happy with. Whereas maybe it might have been about 2010, where a lot of people were just so focused on the big exit and the big return. And I was just like, my kids were little then, and I had no interest, no desire to understand. Like I can't even get my head wrapped around making a product like that work, where it just requires tons of money to even validate a concept. I just don't think that way.
Love your origin story that you shared at the beginning. Anton, you're up.
Yeah. Could you tell a bit how you find the ideas for your projects? Like, and any advice of that?
Every one of them has a unique story, but it's all related to something that we encountered that we needed, right? So
for personal use, right?
Personal or friends, people that we so the very first product that we ever launched was a product called M-Sites. And M-Sites was mini websites. And this was we started building it in 2000 and probably like late 90s, early 2000. And M-Sites was mini websites before Facebook, before did anybody remember Angel Fire and all these crappy sites where you could build your website? And so we wanted to build a simple tool to be able to build your own website. It's got a calendar and it's got, a little mini blog and a photo album. And we were doing that because we knew a lot of campus ministries that we were in relationship with, like Young Life and Campus Crusade and stuff like that. And they were constantly asking us to build them websites. And as a client services business, right? Like if you're going to engage us to build a website, it's going to be like 10 grand. Like, so You can't afford to hire us, but we could build a product where you could, for $30 a month, just build your own website. So that kind of came out of relationships. And then what happened was a lot of those M-Sites customers, they actually went on to plant churches because they were in campus ministry, and then they go on to plant a church. Well, guess what? When you plant a church, you want to put your sermons online. And so then they start reaching out to us and they're like, well, how do we get our sermons online? And we're like, well, you don't know it, but that's a podcast. And so we built Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout was built as a result of our customers that were on our other product, M-Sites, that needed to be able to host audio on the internet. So we built Buzzsprout. And of course, that was 2009 that we launched Buzzsprout, and podcasting was still very like a real niche. But so every one of them kind of has a story that feeds into how we ended up building that product. But they all have a similar characteristic where we knew that there were people that needed this product that would be willing to pay for it.
Nice.
And
Very nice.
and also stuff that I wanted to build, right? Like those are products that I want to maintain, stuff that gets me excited. We have a product called StreamCare, which is crazy. You know, the mantra is the easiest, most profitable way for physicians and pharmacists to make a profit on their workers' compensation claims. Like, that's a long mantra, right? That's how long the mantra needed to be for us to define how we could be the best at this, you know, piece of software. And it's very niche, it's very tight, but I love it because it's almost all code. It's almost all back-end logic. I hate HTML, I hate JavaScript, I hate front end, right? I mean, that's one of my partners, he's a designer, so he does, you know, all that kind of stuff. But that product, ooh, it's so much fun for me to work on. People are like, really, that's fun? Well, yeah, because I love all the back-end logic and stuff like that. And that was another one that we just fell into, that I had some friends that had a need, and there was an opportunity for us to build that product. So I don't know that there's one solution for how you pick a product other than making sure that it's something that you could wake up every day and, you know, want to work on, and that people want to pay for it. I think that's the big one, because a lot of times I talk to people and they're talking about they talk about products, but they don't know if anybody's willing to pay. And then they're doing it for free and they're telling me how great the product is. Well, but nobody's paying you. So how do you know it's really a great product? You know, oh, well, people tell me it is. Well, I bet they do, but it's free. You know, when they put in a credit card and they give you $1, well, then you know. There's a great book that came out a couple of years ago called The Mom Test. It's a great book where it's like, how do you know if your product, if people are actually willing to pay for it? And you run the mom test, and the idea of your mom's always going to say, oh, this is so good, but you really need, you know, real opinions.
Great
Yeah, exactly.
information.
That's what I'm trying to say. If you need some, if you think that some idea can be useful for you, it doesn't mean that it will be useful for others. How did you test them?
You got that's this book. I'm going to put it in there. The mom test. You've got to come up with ways to find out. You want to find out the best way to. You want to run experiments to find out whether or not people are actually willing to pay for this. And what's the minimum investment I can make so that I don't waste too much time and effort to do that, to get to this place where they get to make a transaction with me. But the book's got all kinds of different ideas and surveys and ways to ask the questions of people that are different. Rather than saying, would you pay for this? Like, there's different ways to ask the questions to find out. Like, instead of asking, would you pay for this? You'd say, well, how much money would this save you? Oh, it's not going to save me anything. Okay, well, then it doesn't really matter if you say you're willing to pay for it. It's not going to save you any money. Then you're probably not going to be able to stick with it. So stuff like that.
I've seen sites that they're really, well, the application is really not built, but already people are separating a space in this application. So I guess that's one of the experiments, and that might help you make that decision. So, so Anton got my question. Really good answer, really great. But continuing that line that you were more or less explaining, so you have your first application, but more or less, how do you get to that possible price for you to begin offering to people?
I remember we had no idea how to price
Yeah.
tick. And so what we did was we actually had the price was randomly choosing prices from an array of pricing that we could charge. And then we kind of looked to see what people chose. But at the end of the day, you're trying to price it in line with the value that you give. And so you want to make sure that your price is in line with whatever the value is that you're delivering. And the only way you're going to know that is by knowing the value, right? Of asking, well, what is it worth? What is it worth to you? Looking at competitive solutions to the same problem. For Tick, we got to the point where we're like, look, if I can save you 1 hour a month, if I can save you 1 hour a month, well, that's worth whatever you're billing per hour. So, which I'm hoping is more than $19, right? So it should be in line with the value that we're providing. So it's trying to figure that out. But we're looking at Buzzsprout pricing right now, and we're having a hard time answering that same question of what should it be priced at? What happens if they have 3 podcasts and they're all with you and they're uploading 4 hours? And so anyways, I think it's hard. It's more black art than anything else.
All right.
It's a good
Thank
idea.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you try to take that pricing information into your cost? Do you try to do that analysis? Like, so at what point do you make a determination, hey, we're not charging enough? Or, hey, we're making so much money here, we can actually give a discount?
I don't think we talk a lot about cost other than on Buzzsprout, there are some incremental costs. So for example, if they're using our AI service, well, we know that we're paying for that AI service. Or if they're using our audio enhancements, like magic, we call it magic mastering, there are incremental costs associated with it. But other than that, it's typically lost in the noise because software is so profitable, right? But it's a matter of how many customers do I need to cover the cost of the server, to cover my salary, right? But it's not any individual customer. How would you say that? Maybe the incremental cost of a customer is so low that you really aren't typically looking at that. Now, Buzzsprout was a little bit different because of those add-ons that I told you about. But for like Tick, doesn't matter. StreamCare, the incremental cost of a customer is 0. Like it doesn't cost, you've already got the server, you've already got the people. And so I think it would depend on the product if there was a cost associated with it.
And it sounds like you've had some really good success in, recognizing where a market was and where you could, create a product to serve that market. And so that's like a lot of inside knowledge there, I guess, or just, knowledge of the domain around you. My question to you is, do you think there's any value, or is there value in doing some kind of like surveying for a product, or maybe making like a fake sign up for a product to try to gauge, people talk about doing that to see if there's an interest or demand for a certain kind of idea. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So start with the you'll never be dumber than you are right now. And so anything that I learn, it makes me smarter. And so even if you did a fake sign up form and something, right? You now know how many people are at least willing to fill out your fake sign up form, right? You try to filter out some bots and you try to get some, but you're at least a little bit smarter than you were before you built up the sign up form, right? The question is, how can I learn the most? How, for the least amount of investment, right? With laying the least amount of concrete. But I don't know how to tell anybody else to do that, depending on the field that they're going into, of how they're trying to do that product. At the end of the day, the only way you know what something is worth is what people are willing to pay for it. You can try other ways, like I was saying about saving an hour. I could say I'm saving you an hour of time, but it's really challenging to just come up with what people are willing to pay. Now but a lot of times you can say you can help identify problems. People tell you their problems. The question is that a problem they're willing to pay to solve? I had a buddy that built a product, and he went way far before he ever had a customer paying him. And I remember I went with him. He wanted me to go with him to one of his meetings. I went to this meeting, and the guy says, look, like, I totally believe that your product solves my problem. Yeah, let me tell you, it totally solves my problem. I just don't care enough about the problem that you're solving. And I was like, oh my gosh, you solved a problem that nobody cares about. But he didn't know about it until he'd already solved the problem. If he had talked to that guy earlier, he would have found out that you're solving a problem that nobody is going to pay you to solve. And so that's where I think something like the mom test, something like a framework that you can use, especially if you're in that seeking mode of I'm trying to find a problem to solve, you really need to ask really good questions early on to get an idea of, am I solving a problem that actually is valuable enough that people are willing to pay me?
Can you share any insights on how you do marketing, or if you do marketing, is it word of mouth? Is it, how do you approach that?
We're horrible. We're horrible. We did very little marketing for the longest time. And then Buzzsprout, when podcasting started to really take off, then it became that was an opportunity for us to do SEO, content marketing, and things like that, and paid acquisition. And so, you know, we've gone all in on that, but I wouldn't say that we're marketing geniuses. At the end of the day, you want to get to a place where you know what your customers are worth, and then you try to find ways to spend money less than what they're worth to acquire those customers, right? So you're figuring out what is my lifetime value of a customer, and how can I spend money to acquire that customer?
Nice. Roland, sorry, please go ahead.
No, just it was going back towards your beginnings. How when you started your first app, or I know that you already worked in software, but how well were you in sort of like designing the app or constructing this architecture for this app?
Well,
I tend to think a lot about this, and sometimes I think that this gets me stuck. And sometimes I hear people and I hear the podcast and indie reels, I hear them a lot. And some people they'll just build it, and so I've heard people that if I have to start over, I'll start it over again.
yeah, seriously. I mean, I knew so little about Rails, and Rails was so immature, right? And I didn't know a lot, and Rails wasn't mature. So I think it actually works against us the more that you know about software, because you get in your head and you start solving problems that you don't have. You start engineering complicated scenarios that you might never run into. You're accounting for all the edge cases that you know because you've seen them in your, you know, history. Well, meanwhile, who cares about edge cases, man? Make $1. Get somebody to put their credit card into your form before you go and you start solving issues that you may never run into. And I think my old version of myself, he was so dumb, he didn't even know what the edge cases were. So he didn't spend any time trying to solve them, you know? So I think there's a real benefit in just staying focused. But let me say something about design. So one of the things that really worked well for me, that I credit a lot of what we've been able to experience in terms of success, is the fact that I had a partner who was a designer. A partner, not an employee. I had a partner. And so he was just as motivated as I was to build products that solve real problems. And so he thinks about UI, UX, and he actually HTML and CSS, which is great because I don't want to touch any of that crap. So he would turn it over to me, and then I would make it all work. But I had a very defined problem to solve, right? I know this is what you want the UI to look like. Okay, I can figure out how to do that. And you know, even as bad as I was at coding, I could figure out how to get that form to submit and, you know, get it to work. And so I think I tell people, when people are talking about like ideal team and stuff like that, I say programmer who's invested in the success of the company, and a designer. But with those two people, and when I say designer, not a designer who spends his life in Figma, a designer who understands how to write HTML and CSS so that they can actually get real with their designs. They can build something that's it doesn't necessarily have to be totally functional, but it's got to work in the browser, man. Like, and then I can hook it up. I feel like that's the recipe for success, is a designer and a programmer. With two people, you look at Jason and David, you know, from 37 Signals, like it's the same story that they had. Two guys that are able to, you can build so much with those two people.
Right. Thank you.
No problem.
At the beginning of the conversation, you were sharing about the mobile app you built with Hotwire. Can you maybe give some insight as to how long it took you guys to get up to speed to that? Did you hire somebody that already had that knowledge? What the best way is to acquire that knowledge? Just do you think it's just like just go out and build something, kind of same philosophy as you were just talking about to learn how to do it, or any thoughts there?
We had the luxury of being able to hire somebody. So we had the luxury of being able to hire somebody that knew Rails and had built multiple iOS apps, right? Now he did not know Hotwire native, because that's all kind of newer stuff. But we started with a pretty high degree of expertise, right? Now he had to learn Android to be able, because we wanted to launch both at the same time. We wanted to have an Apple and an Android app. We didn't want one to feel like, a lesser than the other. But if I were a bootstrapper, I didn't have any money to be able to afford that, you still can do it. Like, it's just going to take a little bit longer. But there's tons of material out there. Learn Hotwire native, Joe Mazzalotti, like all of his content is so good. That you should be able to get really far. You build your app with that type of infrastructure, with that type of architecture, right? Resist the urge. Here's the thing, resist the urge to break away from the Rails opinion and start throwing client-side front-end stuff, JavaScript libraries out there. Like, if you start throwing React in there, it's going to be harder, man. If you stick to the Rails, it's going to make it a lot easier for you. You embrace that constraint. Again, I was so dumb, I didn't have a choice but to embrace the constraints because I didn't know anything else was out there, right? And so in some ways that really helped me. Whereas I talk to people all the time and they're like, oh yeah, we're vanilla Rails. Oh yeah, but we're using some React over here and we've got this other thing that we're doing. And I'm like, okay, so those are going to be the friction when you try to do a mobile app, because you're not going to be able to take advantage when new functionality comes out. We're able to incorporate it into our app. We get to stand on the shoulders of all those super smart Rails core developers by being able to pull those features directly into our app, because we're not smart enough to go screw up all the stuff that they do. we're dependent on them, which is like I talked about us supporting the Rails community. Why? Well, because we rely on them so much, and so much of what we've experienced is a result of the work that they've done, not the work that we've done. So that, if I was approaching mobile from the scratch, that's what I would say.
So in the context of you don't solve a problem that you don't have, would you say mobile is a out of the gate necessity, or you can just wait? Like what do you think the modern
it depends
view
on the type
that
of
is?
app that you're building. It depends on the app that you're building. So I can tell you that we do have a little skunk work project going here, that we're looking at a product that we want to build, and it needs to be mobile. Just the nature of the product, the problem that I'm trying to solve, the value that I'm trying to deliver has to happen on mobile. But I can tell you, I'm not building that native, right? It's going to be a Rails server on the back end. It's going to be a Rails app. One, because I'm not smart enough to build a mobile app that's not. And two, because I know I can do it fast. I know I can adapt quickly. So I think it depends on the app that you're trying to do, but you definitely don't need both. I don't even for that app, I know we need to have a mobile app, but you know what? I don't know about the desktop. I don't know what we need for the desktop. With Rails, we kind of get both, but I'm not really going to spend a lot of time worrying about the desktop because I know it's a mobile first app.
Makes sense. Yeah. It's pretty invigorating hearing you go over this, talking, sharing your origin story and all the things you've learned. I kind of, really lights a little bit of a fire under myself, to
And think of it this way too, right? Like, this is what I hope inspires people when they hear this, because you don't need to be Basecamp. You don't need to be Google, right? Think about it. What if you launched a product that was, I don't know, $15 a month, and you got 100 people to do it? That's $1,500 a month, right? And if it's a good product, it's going to grow. And it might grow slow because you don't really know anything about marketing, and it might not, you might not quit your day job right away, but it's growing. It's over time. You start doing the math. It's like, how much money do you really need? If I told you right now that you could have a job where you had all the autonomy in the world, you got to write all the features that you decided you wanted to build, you had all the decision-making power, like, how much would you need to get paid to do that? Well, divide that by the number of customers you think you could sell, and then you can back into a very realistic approach for building an app, there are so many little niche apps that are out there that I hear about, and I'm like, I just can't believe it. I saw there's one that's reading the gas tank meters at gas stations, the tanks underneath the gas station. It's a Rails app. It's like it's such a niche product, right? But how many customers do I need to be able to make it a great business for myself?
Speaking of
Now you
marketing,
hire.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Not sure if that was my audio or what. Quick question, like on the marketing stuff, do you ever look at your demographics? Like, do you think, like, trying to understand who's buying from you, and like, yeah, I'm interested. Do you look there
We're
at all?
just bad at it. We like Tick, we never cracked the nut on Tick. We never could figure out how to sell Tick. Tick only grew organically. We couldn't get AdWords to work. We couldn't come up with any strategies that allowed Tick to grow. So I just don't know. Now, I mean, I was doing all kinds of different things. I was doing weekly calls with customers to talk to, just picking random customers to talk to them about the value that they were getting and how they found out about it, and like trying to learn some of those things about who is our ideal customer. But I could never crack the nut on how to spend money to grow Tick. Buzzsprout, we were able to, but that's because there was such an opportunity with content marketing. So many people were searching for related concepts of podcasting that I could spend money with Google and I could get my name in front of those people, right? And I knew if they're looking for podcasting, they're probably thinking about starting a podcast. And so that was something that I could actually do. But we didn't know anything about the type of customer or anything like that. We just knew search volumes and what content we could create that would be attractive to those people.
So Tick was the first app that you developed as a company, or
It was the first real product. Yeah, it was the first product that we built on Rails, and it was by far our biggest product for the longest time. So Tick, Tick was really paying the bills, and Buzzsprout was just fun because it was podcasting, but it never, like, we used to joke, could you imagine if Buzzsprout was our biggest customer our biggest product, because it was, such a fun product. But Tick was really the one that paid the bills, because you're talking about the lowest plan. It was 19, but I think at some point we even got rid of that and we went to a $39 plan, and the highest plan was $150 a month. And so lifetime value of a customer on Tick was $1,500. The lifetime value of a customer on Buzzsprout is about $300. And so I remember when we started to get into marketing concepts, I was like, why would I spend any time selling Buzzsprout? Buzzsprout has $300 lifetime value. We need to spend all of our time selling Tick. And like, I'll never be as dumb as I was then, right? Like, I was pretty dumb back then, because what I didn't know was, yeah, but it's 100 times harder to sell Tick than it is to sell Buzzsprout. And so even though the customers might not be as worth as much, it's way easier to sell. So
it's still an active product. It's your oldest product, and obviously it's there's enough of a business there that do you keep improving that product given what you just said, or is it pretty much just self-sustaining as is?
Yeah, it's self-sustaining. We're supporting it. We use our old products as kind of like, we maintain them. There are babies. And so we maintain them. So right now we've got a project going where we're upgrading tick to Rails Edge from like Rails 6, so we're getting it up to Rails 8. We're going to deploy it with Kamal, and it's a great test bed for learning, new things that are coming out of Rails. That's it doesn't. If you make a mistake on Buzzsprout, if you roll out a feature in Buzzsprout and there's a bug, you're going to have that bug hit within moments. Like you'll get not just one, but 1,000 of them, 1,000 errors. But with Tick, it's more forgiving, and so it's a good opportunity for us to learn. And so we'll go and we'll build features for I say features like Kamal, like we'll change the deployment strategy for Tick. For donor tools, same thing. We'll go and we'll mess with them, but we're not building features. We're just maintaining it.
Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Tom, I guess we're getting close to the end of the show here. Are you standardizing on Kamal?
Well, so Buzzsprout's all Kubernetes. And so that's a big change. But our other products were all Capistrano. So for those, we're going to go ahead and learn Kamal and see, is it realistic to do what Basecamp did? I mean, that's gutsy. And our product is pretty different than theirs because we have a lot of bandwidth. They don't have as much bandwidth as we do, right? Because theirs is more, their traffic is all admin type traffic, whereas for us, it's all public facing traffic. So we don't know that it makes sense for Buzzsprout to move out of the cloud and into like a Kamal type approach, but it does for our other products for sure.
Very interesting. Thank you. Anyone else have questions? I don't mean to ask so many, but it's a really nice opportunity to pick Tom's brain.
Hey, Tom, I love the idea of being able to say no to customers. And I realize that's not the business most of us are in, or any of us are in, really. We're there to help our customer. But I've worked in consulting for a long time where the answer is always yes and the customer is always right. Has it ever, have you, I suspect the answer is no. Have you ever run into a material issue by politely saying to a customer, no, that feature really isn't something that we care to add, or has it really just been a non-issue for you over the years?
This is what I think has worked well for us, which is going back to our mantra. So I'll give you a perfect example for Tick. One of the most common feature requests that people would write in and go, I need a weekly time card. And our response is, we could just say no. We could lie. We could say, oh, well, thank you for that. We'll add it to our roadmap, right? But the reality is, we want to be the best product for you to track your time and hit your budgets. You will not hit your budgets if you enter in your time 1 week at a time. You're going to blow your budget because you're waiting until the end of the week, right? And then all of a sudden it's the weekend and you forgot to do it. And then it's Monday morning. And next thing you know, your project manager is trying to figure out, how did we blow our budget? Well, because I put in all of my hours on Monday morning into my weekly timesheet. So instead of lying to our customers, instead of, just placating them, we would write back and we'd say, this isn't something that we would do because we're focused on helping you hit your budgets. And we're not going to help you hit your budget with a weekly time card. But here's 2 of our competitors that have a weekly time card. You should check them out. And it was always a great response. Now, you can do that when no one customer owns you, right? When they're not that big. And that's something when you get into your pricing, right? I like the fact that Buzzsprout, I told you, lifetime value of a customer is $300. Well, if you don't give me this feature, I'm going to leave. Okay, it's $300, right? Like, I don't want you to, but like, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. But it's harder to do that when you got a product where, let's say, the lifetime value of a customer is $15,000. Well, now all of a sudden, now it's a real tension. Now, I would still fight hard. The StreamCare lifetime value of customer is in the millions, right? And so when those customers tell you that they need this feature, it is a tense conversation in the office, right? Because they all know, right? I represent the software when I'm saying, no, I'm not going to build that feature. And like, but we had a customer that, they might leave us. And I'm like, I don't want that mass in my product. It's not going to help us be the easiest, most profitable way for them to get collect on their workers' comp claims. So why am I going to build that feature? Well, because they said they pay for us to build the feature. Well, that's even worse, right? Because that means that they think that we're just going to build whatever they want us to build. Like, no, I'm building a product that does one thing, and it does one thing really, really well. And what is that one thing? That's my mantra. And if the customer doesn't agree with my mantra, then they shouldn't be my customer. You know, salespeople don't like to hear that.
Thank you.
That's great, man. And it's working. It seems to be working very well for you.
Like I said, there's an element of grace. Like, I don't want to tell everybody that this is the prescription for doing it, but I definitely have we left money on the table? Absolutely. Could we have made more money? Could we have sold a product? Could we have sold, like, I'm so many different ways that we could have made money, I'm sure. But I can tell you, I like the work that we do. I like the team that I get to have. I like the culture that we've created as an organization. And all of those things would be endangered if we made changes to a lot of those things.
Last question for me, because I know you probably want to get out of here. How much time, if any, do you focus on like new product development, like going out there finding the next Buzzsprout? You know,
None, really, none, because there's enough. I could launch a feature on Buzzsprout that would probably make more money than launching a new product, right? So that's typically so it's hard to be thinking about a new product when I could really think about, for example, we could build a website builder for Buzzsprout. If we did that, we could probably charge, I don't know, $10, $15 a month. Well, I've already got all these customers. So why would I go launch a product that costs $10 or $15 a month when I could just launch a feature to a product and make it, you know what I mean? And so it makes it hard to think about new products. Now, that being said, I told you that we have this little Skunkworks project that we're talking about building this product. Why are we doing that? Because we're a little bored. And I don't have an angel VC investor, anybody breathing down my neck telling me what I have to do. And so if I want to do something just because it's fun, and if we want to explore an idea for a product just because we want to, I can do that. But it's not something that we actively pursue, other than if the opportunity presents itself and it's fun, it's something that we want to do, we would do it. Does it make business sense? Not a lot of good business sense, but we would do it.
one thing that struck me, I think this is in the pre-talk, you were talking about, you know, the biggest number of employees you have is on support. And with the advent of, you know, AI and all the disruptions that are happening there, do you see that changing? Like, so, you know, I'm not saying, like, do you see like your support load being you know, eased by using AI, or are you more like the, you know, how Trader Joe's, they have the people, you know, as opposed to Amazon or, you know, Whole Foods, they have like the automated checkout, you know, are you more the,
No.
I want the person and talking to a person who needs support?
Yeah, I think AI is going to help them be more efficient. There's a possibility that it might help people get a faster response to certain things. But what we did not know when we were growing Buzzsprout, we were willing to spend money on Google AdWords. We were willing to spend money on all these other things. You know where we weren't spending money? On our support team. Well, if I could go back, I would have grown our support team much sooner, because they tell everyone. When you make a customer happy, like our support team, they are amazing. Like they're not technical people. Literally, the requirements to be on our support team is they have to be good writers and they have to be empathetic. That's it, right? Like I'll teach you the podcasting, but those two things I can't teach you. You need to be a good writer and you need to be empathetic. And so what they do all day long is they interact with real people, and they themselves are real people interacting with people. Like I tell them, like, you're not using vanilla language. You're not, copying and pasting from an FAQ. You're using emojis, you're using funny GIFs. You're communicating as a person to real people. And as a result of that, but our Buzzsprout brand is so strong. People love interacting with our team. Literally, nice. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Orlando, podcasting conference. And since it's so close, I'm in Jacksonville. a bunch of the support team went down there. So people would come up to the booth, and the co-founder of the company, they would come over to the booth and they would ask for support for the support team. And then they asked me to take their picture. And I was like, this is
I love
so
that.
great, right? They don't care about me at all. I wrote most of the code that runs their software. They don't care about me. Who do they want to get a picture? They want me to take their picture with the support team. And that just, captures how important that support team is. And so they also go around that conference, and what are they telling people? Oh my gosh, Buzzsprout, they're the best podcast hosting platform in the world. And, you got to meet Priscilla. Priscilla's the one that helped me when it was, 10 o'clock at night and I didn't know how to add a CNAME to a DNS record. And she, was there for me and helped me through that, and I just think support is huge. So will AI play a part in that? Yeah, absolutely. Will it eliminate positions? I don't think so. I think it's just going to help them be more effective.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. It's a great opportunity, you guys, to get some brilliant insight on building your next your SaaS. If anyone else has questions, please don't hold back. And
I'm going to put my email in there, tom@higherpixels.com. Don't hesitate to email me. Also, I started a Discord group for people that are building products. And if anybody's interested in that, drop me an email and I'll send you an invite. And we are breaking them up into like different cohorts. People that are in the idea stage, people that are in the revenue idea stage, the building stage, and the revenue stage. And so then that way you can interact with people that are at the same level that you are. But we're still in the early phases of getting it going. So I'm trying to stir up activity in there. But if anybody wants to join, just drop me an email and I'll get you in there.
Oh, great opportunity. Thank you
Perfect.
for
That's
that.
great.
You've been very, very generous, Tom, with your time.
Thanks.
The
Thanks for
talk
having
was
me.
awesome. All the insights, fabulous. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great. I'm glad you guys liked it. Thanks. Don't hesitate to reach out if I ever can help. Appreciate you guys.
And you too, man.
Really, thank you. Thank you a
Thank
lot.
you.
I mean, at least for me, who's beginning, I'm here very motivated, like Richard said, very motivated. It's
Awesome.
really good.
I love it.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording here, everyone.